we had this situation where we're about to roll out. We've made it all the way through. We've got 3 different plants across the country that are producing. And we wind up in this situation where we find out that our plant in Idaho just got closed. FDA closed it. And there was some issue with a product that we weren't making, and they just shut it down. And we're like, oh my God, we're building inventory to roll national in 2 weeks. We've made all these promises to do accounts and stuff, and we're not going to have the product. We're going to have enough, to basically do just a very little of what we were supposed to do. So I was at an offsite planning next year. Steve calls and says, get in the office now, and you're taking the corporate jet up to Idaho, and you're not coming back until you fix it.
We would like to thank our title sponsor, B1 Bank. B1 Bank knows that entrepreneurs like you are always thinking one step ahead. So you need banking solutions that can keep up. It begins with lending. Does your business need working capital or financing for new equipment? How about a real estate or a construction loan? Good news, the B1 lending team is ready to learn your goals and help you find the best lending option available. Now let's talk about uncomplicating your daily cash flow. B1 offers a full array of treasury management services that let you collect funds faster, pay funds more efficiently, and access your information with powerful online tools. Most importantly, B1 understands the value of working with local nonprofits to build a stronger community. They believe in giving back through hands-on involvement with their B1 Community Outreach Program because it's simply the right thing to do. B1 Bank. Be uncomplicated. To learn more, visit b1bank.com. Equal housing lender, member FDIC. Hello, I'm Andrew McLindon, your host of the Next Entrepreneur podcast. We are here in lovely Hollywood Hills, California, just outside of Los Angeles, in the home of Bill Atchinson. Bill, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Bill is the founder and president of Growth Ventures. It's been fun to do the research on you, and I think it's interesting to connect how and why we're here. And that started with you being a generous donor to the McLindon Family Foundation, our family's charitable project where we provide adaptive bikes to children with special needs. And we were coming out here to make several deliveries to bikes that you had helped fund over time. And we wanted to get as much done out here as we can. So we said, let's talk to Bill about his business acumen. And here we are. So thank you for joining us.
It's great to be here. We love the foundation.
I appreciate that. So how long have you guys been in L.A. now?
Just under 10 years.
10 years. And you were in Arizona prior to that?
Yeah, we grew up in the Northeast, and it's been a long trek west. So we were in the Northeast for right through grad school and the first couple jobs. And then eventually we wound up with 2 different stays in Arizona for about 25 years.
Yeah, beautiful place.
Oh, we loved it, yeah. When we were growing up in upstate New York, the weather was what you would think it was. And first trip out to Arizona that my dad made with Mom, they were out back in December, and he looked at me and he goes, if you and Deb live here the rest of your life, it'll just about even out. So we're not moving. We are tied to the West now. Yeah.
Well, and it can get kind of warm there.
Arizona summers are.
Yeah, for sure. I was there in end of January. I go to a conference there every year, a banking conference, and I just love it.
Yeah, that's the time to go.
Yeah, but this is beautiful. Folks, we are have a beautiful view of downtown Los Angeles from your sitting room here, and it is absolutely stunning. So thank you for having us in your home. You mentioned you grew up in the Northeast. I know you went to school there, but I wanted to ask you, prior to college and what have you, were you entrepreneurial as a young man?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, my brother and I, we used to, when we were 12, 13 years old, mow lawns and shovel yards and stuff like that. And we figured we were never going to be millionaires if we didn't start investing. And so a guy that I caddied for, he was a broker. He became our broker. And one day we were doing some research and we decided it was time to invest. And we took the New York Times Sunday edition, and back then they would have the range of the stock, high, low. And we found a thing called Mohawk Data that was at $2 a share, and it had been at 102. So we went to the bank, pulled all our money out, and went to see Mr. Hazard. And when we went in, he said, "Well, it's good, boys. It's good that this is a good way to learn business and stuff like that by investing. What is it that you're interested in?" And we said, "Well, we want to buy Mohawk Data." And he turned white. He said, "Mohawk Data?" And we said, "Yeah, it's at 2, and it's going to 102, or that's where it was, and we're gonna make the ride back up." And he goes, "What do you guys call that?" We said, "That's the balloon theory." So he goes, "Just a second, I'm going to go back and do some research." He went in the back room and he called my dad. And he goes, "Do you know what the hell your sons are doing?" And Dad said, "You know what? This would be a good lesson." He said, "Why don't you see if you can steer them into something that is a little safer?" So we did, but that's how we started.
How did Mohawk turn out?
We only bought a little of that. We wound up buying Pan Am because and so Mohawk went from like 3 to 5. But we bought Pan Am, and this is a true story. The next day after we bought Pan Am, I went out to get the paper, and the front page of the paper is the biggest air crash in history in Paris, Pan Am, and so we took our bikes and rode down to see Mr. Hazard, and we said, "What's the price of our stock?" And he goes, "There's no price yet." He said, "What's that mean?" He means there's no buyers. So we'll have to wait until it opens later. So it opened up, it was $1, and we bought at 5. And my mom, who never would take any risk at anything, she was so conservative, it was great. She goes, "Well, that's just great. You got tired of Wilmer National Bank, and now you've lost 80% of what you had." So my brother decided that Bobby is one of the best investors in the country.
Your brother?
Yeah, as it turns out. So Bobby runs this group called the Adage Company, or the Adage Investment Group, and this was his first foray. And I had all money in, but Bobby still had some in reserve. He went back to Wilmer National Bank and put more in. And Mr. Hazard going, "Bobby," he goes, "I'm so sorry you guys ever got into this." And Bobby goes, "Nope." He goes, "This is where you prove you're a real man and you buy more." So anyhow, it worked out. Bobby held on. Pan Am came back. The tragedy aside, the funny part of it was we learned one great lesson early on.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
But my dad was an entrepreneur because when he came out, he was a lawyer, and when he came out of law school, he worked in a practice, and he really wanted to have his own practice. And so what he wound up doing was he didn't have the money to set up his own office, so he went to the local bank and took out a loan. It's all the money that he had. And then he went to the other bank in town, and they said, "Well, how much money do you have to set up the office?" He didn't tell them where he got the money from, but he said, "I got this money." And they go, "Oh, good, so we'll double that." He opened his office with no money. So anyhow, that's where we got it from.
So college in the Northeast, Hartwick?
Yes.
And then on to Wharton School. Mm-hmm. I had a guest on, John Veluso, a few weeks ago from Baton Rouge, one of the largest McDonald's franchisees in the country. And he went to Wharton School. And it was one of those times that we had a fantastic conversation, but I realized afterwards I knew him when we were much younger, and I never really had talked to him about having gone to the Wharton School. And that just strikes me as being a really big deal, and I wish I'd have made more of it. And here's my opportunity. A fantastic school, and just looking at some of the past alumni, Peter Lynch, Ron Perlman.
Oh, it was a great school.
Yeah, John Scully, CEO of Apple, Sundar Pichai, I'm not sure if I'm saying his last name right, CEO of Alphabet, Laura Lang, CEO of Time. I mean, Ron Perlman, Forbes said, was one of the greatest living business minds. I mean, a lot of really, really successful people spent their time there. So that had to set you up well for.
Yeah, what I took out of it, because I told you earlier that I was new. I was right out of college, and most of my peers had work experience.
Right.
So I was like that 1/3 of people that go to Wharton that didn't have business in terms of experience. But what was great about Wharton was it was this combination of, like, Harvard was all case study, Stanford had their way of doing things, and Wharton was somewhere in between. And I thought, in terms of learning, it's terrific. Yeah. And my favorite course, the one I think we learned the most from, there was this thing called the Wharton Game, and this was a thing that Chris Mader would take out. He was a consultant that taught at Wharton. And the game was the first simulated game in terms of learning business. So you would be with like 4 or 5 other of your teammates, and you'd set up like a company on the simulator. And every week you would put your inputs in. You'd compete against everybody else, and the computer would spit out how everybody is doing. So the tradition had been in the game was that you would take a Greek number or a Greek letter. So there's the alpha team, the beta team. And we were at Epsilon, and we said, that's not our name. So we became the Elks Club. To the embarrassment of Chris, for the first 5 weeks, we were smoking. And we would go to, there was a little pub called Smoky Joe's. And we would go there on Tuesday night, make all our decisions, put them in, and life was good. And then we came in that Friday after the 5th week or so, and all of a sudden, he would post the results. And then you would walk into the big auditorium, and we'd have class. We'd gone from first to last. And we were, what the heck happened? So after class, we go up to Chris and we said, what happened? We had no sales, we had nothing. What? And he goes, oh, you didn't read the asterisk? And the asterisk was, our plant burned down. And we had put 0 money in terms of maintenance. And he was laughing at us. And he goes, I heard where you guys were making decisions. I was just teaching you a lesson. It took us the rest of the semester to catch up. I mean, we got killed.
That's fantastic.
But the learning, I think the important thing was the learning that Chris gave us was typical of so many great people there that we were able to learn from, because it was so practical, and we would go out and there would be a lot of other people who had different experiences and stuff like that. But I just felt like Wharton really made you ready to play. Yeah. It was good.
Yeah. So then you embarked on a 15-year career in corporate America. A lot in the food industry?
Yeah, a lot of food and beverages.
Yeah. Well, so you started with Kraft General Foods, right?
Yeah.
And then on to Corning and the Dow Corporation. And I mean, over time, you're growing and your responsibilities, right? And then to walk us through a little bit what that process looked like, and you had some big wins along the way. Why don't you touch on some of those?
Yeah, so I was lucky in my career. So I went into marketing, and basically marketing in big companies, you're really in charge of building the brand and building the business, and you have tremendous support teams. And I wound up several different times winding up either managing a large brand and or being put in charge of new products. And I love the new products part because it was so entrepreneurial. It just really appealed to me. And
it felt like almost a standalone new startup.
Yeah, and it's like anybody. It's the exact same thing if you're starting a brand new business.
Yeah,
it's the highest highs and the lowest lows you're ever going to have. You've done it, and I loved it. I love the challenge of doing something that disrupts the market. I love the challenge of finding better solutions that consumers really get excited about. And so 4 different times in those 15 years, I was able to lead a team where we went from 0 to 100 million. And that was back in the 80s, early 90s, when $100 million was really a lot of money. And it was all, it wasn't me. It was, I had a lot of the energy that would be a catalyst, but I had just incredible people to work with. In fact, the best one I can think of is Healthy Choice. I moved, and the family moved to Omaha to work with ConAgra. Healthy Choice was a business that had done really well. That's the frozen dinners and entrees. And it was the first real big, better-for-you food brand. And when we came out, the idea was they were in frozen dinners. 35% of the U.S. eats frozen dinners. Could you do something that breaks out and gets the brand into like 90% of households? And so we decided we're going to go after soups. And the chairman got so excited about it that this was right around this time of year. We said, we're going to go after soups. And he goes, okay, well, when can you be in market? And we said, well, I thought, he said, actually the way he worded it was, when does the soup market start? When do you have to be out selling to different accounts and stuff like that? So, well, probably like July. And he goes, good. We'll give you the support you need. I thought he was talking test market. He was talking national. We didn't have a plant. We didn't have a product. We didn't have anybody that knew anything about soups. And off we went. And 6 months later, there are other disasters that happened along the way. But we wound up, becoming a business that ultimately was like $150 million in its first year. And the thing that was amazing.
That's a lot of soup.
It is a lot of soup. But Steve Hughes was my boss at the time. He's the one that runs Sunrise. We're good friends. And we had the situation where we're about to roll out. We've made it all the way through. We've got 3 different plants across the country that are producing. And we wind up in this situation where we find out that our plant in Idaho just got closed. FDA closed it. And there was some issue with a product that we weren't making, and they just shut it down. And we're like, oh my God, we're building inventory to roll national in 2 weeks. We've made all these promises to do accounts and stuff, and we're not going to have the product. We're going to have enough, to basically do just a very little of what we were supposed to do. So I was in an offsite planning next year. Steve calls and says, get in the office now, and you're taking the corporate jet up to Idaho, and you're not coming back until you fix it. So Deb, my wife, she came down with my clothes. We said goodbye forever. And the great thing about Steve was, why we were, taking the team out to go fix this problem. Steve calls me back into his office one more time before I left. And he is such an optimist. And here, while Rome is burning, he goes, hey, Bill, when you get back, I want to talk to you about condensed soups. So it was classic. But, yeah, those are the kind of adventures, when you talk about that. It's no different, than when we started this business, Growth Ventures. It's the same thing my dad had, the same thing that you had. When you start something new, you have all these visions of how great it's going to be, but you have to be resilient because those bad days are going to come.
Right. Yeah, particularly in a startup situation where, it's a matter of do you have enough tenacity, and do you have enough support to get you to where you can catch on?
Oh, right? Absolutely.
So,
on that thought, I had that maybe one of the best learnings I've ever had was. When I started Growth Ventures, I set it up in a way where I had to travel a lot. I knew that was going to be part of the game. But when I was home. And I wound up coaching youth soccer for 19 years. And in Arizona, it's a big commitment. If you do competitive, that's 8-9 months a year. And I think I learned more about resilience and stuff from those girls because they, especially when they get to be teenagers, there's 100 other things that they can do. But they were on the soccer field for the same reason that I was doing what I was doing, which is they loved it.
Yeah,
they loved it. It was just the ability to work together to build something special. It was it was. You didn't have to wake up in the morning thinking about what am I going to get excited about today.
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
Cool. So you did the big business line success a number of times. At what point were you ready to say, "Hey, I'm ready to go out on my own"? Have you been eyeing that for a while?
Always in the back of my mind. But I was at Miller, which Miller was huge back then. They were, the beer business is such a different business today. But back then it was the big three. And Miller had 20%, And I loved it. I loved the people that we worked with, loved with the distributors. And
that was back in the taste great, less filling days.
Yeah. And I had Genuine Draft originally, so that was the counter brand to Light. And
yeah, I remember when that rolled out. That was
it was actually, your market was one of the better markets for it.
I bet.
But that was, I couldn't believe I was getting paid to go to work. I mean, that was so much fun. It was a challenge, but when I realized deep down in that it was going to be time to move someday, two things. One was family, but one was business. And on the business side of it, some of the people who had always been in the beer business would go, boy, isn't this the greatest thing ever? To get paid for doing this work. And I would say, yeah, except this market's not growing. And, it's like if you're a real entrepreneur and you want to create something that will really change things.
Yeah.
That wasn't in the cards in working at Miller. However, the other thing that was a big driver was we'd had a few moves. And I told Deb that when Laura, who's our oldest daughter, we're about to have our first grandchild. That gets a little emotional, I think, of Laura right now.
Congrats.
Just the idea that we wouldn't move anymore when the kids got to junior high. So that's when we went to Scottsdale. We said, that's it. We're going back to Scottsdale. We're setting up the consulting practice, and off we went. And like my dad, we took everything we had to make. So sorry about this. It was to make our home my office, and it was awesome. It was awesome, and I never once thought about, boy, we're taking a lot of risk here.
Yeah.
Because, I rolled all the kids' savings, everything we had into that house.
Yeah, I was going to ask how you started, but I wanted to comment on that grandparent thing. So we have 5 now.
Oof.
Yeah. And
what ages?
6 to 1. And we have my oldest daughter and my middle daughter had babies within a couple of weeks. So we have 2 1-year-olds. And, it's everything.
What a riot.
Absolutely.
2 1-year-olds.
Yeah. So,
and what do you have, a mix of girls, boys?
Yeah, 3 boys and 2 girls. The 2 1-year-olds are boys. But I don't know. It's an interesting way of being able to take a different perspective on life. Typical journey of an entrepreneur. I've heard it so many times where the entrepreneur and their family, their sacrifices, right, in building the business. In those first 15 years, you're building your career, and then it goes into your entrepreneurial journey. But when you have that opportunity to be a grandparent and you can, really try to focus, double down, and make the best of that time.
Oh, I'm with you.
It's a great gift, man.
I'm with you.
It is great. So I understand your emotion. Bill, let's take a quick break there. We'll get in a word from our sponsor. We'll enjoy this view for a moment, and we'll be right back.
We would like to thank MBD Automation for their support of the Next Entrepreneur podcast. MBD Automation is a mechanical install contractor with a program-centric focus. So what do these guys do? They install conveyor systems, VRCs, platforms, singulators, sorters, and all sorts of other types of automated equipment. Who do they work for? They work for systems integrators, manufacturers, and end users in fulfillment centers, airports, mail processing facilities, and projects in the defense industry. MBD Automation works for numerous Fortune 500 companies across the United States and has a list of international clients that they perform work for in the U.S. as well. If MBD Automation can help you on your next project, you can find them online at mbdautomation.com.
And we are back with Bill Atchinson. Bill, so we left it there where you are wrapping up your corporate career. You're ready to start your own gig. You're moving to another part of the country. There's all sorts of parts and pieces going on. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I had, knowing in my last 6-7 months at Miller that I was ready to go, I'd had this standing offer from two really good friends of mine, Mike Maloney and Richard Czernowski. Those guys had a business consultant business called BDN, and Mike was out of Frito-Lay. He was the head of their international marketing. Richard was the head of Coca-Cola marketing before they joined forces. And I had used them as consultants. I loved them. I thought that these guys were two of the best business builders I'd ever met.
Wow.
And we were all good friends. And they had this outstanding offer, if I ever got tired of the corporate side, come join them. And I had that in the back of my mind, but I didn't want to join and not bring anything. And the business wasn't going to succeed if you take on a third wheel and it doesn't drive new growth. So anyhow, I reached that point at Miller where I knew for the last 6-9 months it was time to go. Well, with the commitment to the family, one of the things that happened was we had changed what we were doing at Miller, so we were fundamentally changing the entire marketing organization. And I was in charge of the southern region at the time. Back to your home. So I had the good part of the country. And I would have ideally liked to have sold the home, told everybody and moved. But it became clear as we got later in the year that the business wasn't there at Miller in terms of being ready. And I didn't have the heart to step out with a job that wasn't finished. Right. So what we did was we sold our house secretly in Milwaukee, started building this home in Scottsdale, took all the money that we had out of the bank, and it was all in that building progress. My wife had a second job as contractor because she was going over every day to see how the new home is coming. Kids are living in this tiny, tiny place, and our youngest daughter, Sarah, was about a year and change, and so it was crazy. And every Thursday night, I would take the last flight out of, it left at 11 at night, out of Milwaukee into Phoenix, drive out to the apartment, and spend the weekend with the kids. And then I'd take the last flight back to Milwaukee. And Monday morning, I'd be the first one in the office. Wow. And, it was a real wild run for a bunch of months. And then of all things, the house gets delayed. And so when we finally made the move, it was January, and it was amazing because we just had been in this routine. I was so thankful that we got the job done at Miller. Everything looked great, and it was time to go. And everybody at Miller was shocked. They had no idea. And off on the next adventure. So that experience was an experience where, again, I think it's the entrepreneurial side of you. Do you really have the drive to do crazy things like that to start your business? And if you do, but if you think you're going to do it with anything less than that kind of passion, it's not going to work.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about what Growth Ventures does. It's a consultancy, right? Yes. So your clients are, when you left to start that, did you feel like you had some leads or something to?
No, it was more of thinking about what I wanted to create, and that was what I was really pretty confident on. Yeah. So I'd had the catbird seat for years, watching best practices in terms of how to build these different businesses, and I thought what I had seen was, if you look at a company that is on a tear, that's outperforming competition for a series of years, from my view, it was one of three things were working really well. So either branding was on fire, they were doing something great in innovation, or the growth strategy, which is all about, how you go to market, was working. And by the way, it doesn't have to be all three of those things, but if even one of them is on fire, then that's what creates, great breakthrough brands and businesses.
You can think now today of great branding things, the Chick-fil-A cows.
Love them.
Right?
Yes.
How brilliant is that? Or the Geico gecko thing, And I don't know about their innovation.
So see what you just did, though? That's interesting. They say that we get exposed to, it used to be 750. Now with social media and stuff, it's up to 3,000 different ads or messages a day. We have no way, absolutely no way of taking any of that in, except for there's a few that break through. And the ones that break through, and this is the magic of branding, if you can think about your product or service or whatever you're doing in terms of something that creates both a rational and emotional connection, Chick-fil-A, you can't mention that without laughing.
Right.
But actually, if you think about it, the message underneath is really, really clever.
Yeah.
So I think that's the inside story on brands is that it's as much why there's a lot of science to it, and now we're going to have A1 that's going to help you, supposedly make other decisions and stuff like that. It's still an art.
Yeah.
Which is what's so.
I frequently think whenever I do see good commercials that are now today seem to be funner than they used to be.
Yes.
But I think those guys must have a whole lot of fun going to work every day, just coming up with goofy commercials. But you can see this. In those two examples, I said, I don't know how good their innovation is, and I don't know what their growth strategy is. But they hammered the branding, right? And what you're suggesting is that in itself could be enough.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, a good example is this company that we've had a chance to work with with our Sunrise partners. Well, actually, let me go back. Maybe one of the best branding jobs ever was Ben & Jerry's. And in Growth Ventures, we did work with them on new products for about 7 years. And those guys, I mean, you talk about entrepreneurs. I was good friends with the lady who, right now I can't think of her name, but she was the third employee. So there's Ben, Jerry, and this poor woman. Ben would come back and he'd be out driving all over New England, stop in overnight, and literally take whatever was in his pocket and dump it on the desk. And those are all the orders. And oh, by the way, here's a few checks and stuff like that. And she had to figure it all out. And it was like they built that business doing that. And Jerry was the operations guy. And Ben would always be the big dreamer. We got to do something different. Got to do something different. It's got to be spectacular. And Jerry would come back and like one of the things that really made him different was they were the ones that came up with the ideas of putting chunks in ice cream. Right. And Jerry would look all over the country and said, Ben, there's nobody can do that. And Ben would go, you're damn right. That's why we're doing it. And that kind of spirit of it can be done. We're going to do it. Led them to do great things. What was interesting was when I got there, the business was flatlining, and we saw a couple of things that were interesting. But this is going back to brand, right, and really understanding what is it that I'm really serving. And with Ben and Jerry's, what they had done was they had this image of the brand as it's everything indulgent. It's like the food you eat when the brakes are off, completely off, and they had something that I thought was pretty interesting. But on the other hand, there was a lot of momentum in better for you products. And one of the things was interesting. They have this thing called share requirements. So what that measures is, as a consumer, how much of any category do you allocate to that brand? You would think with Ben and Jerry's that number would be sky high, and it was not as high as it should have been. And the reason why was they could not and would not do vanilla ice cream. They would not do chocolate ice cream because it's too boring. There's no chunks in it. And we said, Ben, what you're doing is, and the guys that we were working with, Walt Freeze was at the time was the president. He got it. We're like, you basically, if you're going to be a consumer-driven business, there's a time when consumers want just vanilla ice cream. I'll put stuff on it if I want to. Right. And you're not playing in that lane. So every time you don't play in that lane, they're going to Haagen-Dazs, they're going to somebody else, and you just left the door open. What was brilliant about Ben and Jerry's, though, was they said, okay, we'll do a vanilla. But what they did was then they went to the cause-driven part of the business, which was their business was vanilla for a change. It was all about fair trade practices. Right. Chocolate for a change. And I thought, that's branding. Yeah. That's branding. So they understood that they didn't have all the answers, but then when they heard what the consumer wanted, they went right back and they created their version of it, if you will.
So over a 25-year in Growth Ventures, you've worked with some huge companies, right? The Ben and Jerry's, the Frito-Lay's, Shell Oil, Unilever, Celestial Seasonings, just reading from a list here, General Mills, Quest, Tropicana, PepsiCo. I mean, that's some big accounts. Tell us, what some of your favorite, consulting jobs were with those companies?
The thing that is the most rewarding, which, we've been so lucky, is when you're done with an assignment that we work on, where you watch them grow, that you hit, and again, what made us, this is like every brand, every experience has to have a point of difference. Our point of difference was we were growth specialists.
Right.
You kind of think with that growth mindset. And
so let me ask you, Bill, when you're saying that growth, I keep thinking from a product perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So if a company that you're consulting with may have a number of different lines and a number of different products under those lines, am I understanding this correctly? Like you may be focusing in on one of those products,
yes,
and making that product grow.
So here's a good one that we've been working on for the last 5-6 years. A good friend of mine went to a group called KT Tape. So KT Tape is kinesiology tape.
That's what you see the athletes.
You got it. Yeah. Historically, kinesiology tape was started by a group called Kinesio, and it was used post-surgery. And the way the tape works is by putting the tape on an area where you've got strained muscle or joints or stuff like that. What the tape does is it's actually lifting the skin up enough that what it allows the body to do better is all of a sudden it facilitates blood flow coming into that area and gets rid out of other fluids that are related to the injury. And it heals faster and or it reduces pain. So the guys who started KT Tape saw it at I think it was the 2008 Olympics. And they made a big deal in the 2012 Olympics by actually going out and sponsoring Kerry Walsh Jennings. And it took off. Well, when my friend got there, it had plateaued. It was about 17 million or so, and it had plateaued. And Greg called me in. He said, we got to turn this into a consumer-driven business because this is a really terrific product.
So it was mainly strictly athletes.
Yeah, and that was the brilliance of it, was turning it into a brand. So what the idea was, with zero marketing budget, they would go and instead of sponsoring like Tiger Woods, they would go to the PGA trainers. Or instead of going and getting to specific, like LeBron James or something like that, they would sponsor the Olympic team. And then James Harden shows up on the court with KT Tape on his shoulder. Right. And what winds up happening is the visible sports, if you would. So beach volleyball is huge because you can see the tape anywhere. If I'm
not wearing much.
Oh, if I'm wearing tape and I'm a hockey player, you're not going to see it.
Right, exactly.
So what built it was running. What built it was all the marathons and stuff like that. And what's interesting is that we did this growth strategy work with them where we kept looking inside the box for how you grow that. So they had this one tape that's made out of cotton, very comfortable. Next step up was extreme. Extreme is for areas like where you live, where it's hot and humid. And if you don't have something that has more adhesive, it's coming off. Right. That's also good enough for swimmers. And they made it a line for swimmers called Extreme. Then they came out with a blister tape, which is another great unknown product. And that's great for using the same technology, but for preventing blisters. So they've done all these things. They can now have a nice size portfolio. Business has tripled. So when you ask me the thing that's what I'm most proud of, it's those kinds of things, where in 5 years that business has tripled. And I still think from the work that we've done, they've got so much white space in front of them because most people still don't know about it, or if they do know about it, this is the other lesson for business builders, is even your most ardent consumers, they don't know everything about you. And a lot of times it's being choiceful in your communications. Again, going back to that 3,000 messages a day. What sticks? If I can figure out from a innovation standpoint, if I go into that product, what are the real drivers that are going to take you from interested to definitely would buy? And what we do, the other thing that we do that's different, my old partner Blake, God bless him, Blake was the one that forced us into research. I went kind of kicking and screaming. But we just had too many situations where we were doing research and we'd hand it off to somebody. And researchers sometimes are researchers, they're not business builders. So we would be doing interviews with consumers. And we'd be sitting in the back of the room and some consumer would say something. We go, Oh my God. And then it got skipped over. We were, you were right on the verge of a big breakthrough. But by taking control of the research, what we did was we started to look at how do you accelerate faster? And that's where we came up with this idea that now I think is pretty common, but we do a lot of research with heavy users. So we're trying to figure out if you have a product or service, who are the people that are going to be your most loyal customers, going to use these the most often, and drive your strategy around their thoughts and their needs versus everybody else.
So your business model is consulting, right? And explain to us how that works. Is that as simple as it sounds, where you maybe give a proposal, whatever it may be, or hourly charge, whatever? But are there ever instances where there's some upside for you on a brand if it is to go to the stratosphere, or does that just earn you another opportunity to get another bite of the apple?
Yeah, no. What they do is when they see there's a chance to make real money, they go, okay, that's enough of you guys.
We got it from here, fellas.
No, we do. Like on Sunrise, for example, we've had a chance to. That's different because with the Sunrise Group, 90% of our business now is with Sunrise, and they're active investors, so we've become, active investors as well.
Okay, so let's talk about Sunrise.
Yep.
And the connection, that's Sunrise Strategic Partners.
Yes.
Right. You're an advisor for them, and they are an investment group.
Correct. Yep.
So whereas Growth Ventures was all consulting, growth, just a really focus on growth.
Yeah, real specialist.
Yeah, which I really love, because we've had a couple other business consultants on the show during this second season.
I hope that doesn't take away. You had some nice momentum with consultants up until now, so I hope this doesn't take away from that.
No, they seem to be more. They may have been specialized in a certain industry, but within that industry, just whatever seemed to have come up in the realm of doing business, from HR matters to growth to special projects, that kind of thing. Whereas what's really fascinating about what you're doing is this hyper focus on growth, which I love.
Yeah,
I love that.
What has, through pure luck, that was the area that we were good at, and also through pure luck, we were in consumer goods 9 times out of 10. And what wound up happening is that kind of bulletproofed us from recessions, because when do you not need to grow, right?
Yeah.
And in recessions, I had some good friends of mine that were in automobiles and stuff like that, and they no fault of their own, they had great practices, but they were going to go with the cycles of those industries.
Right.
So that's pure luck.
Okay, so strategic partners, you're doing the consulting and growth ventures. You team up through this advisory capacity with Sunrise, and they've put together a fund.
Yes.
And they're investing in these companies, and then you would be consulting with those companies on their growth and branding.
Exactly. So that Kodiak one that I was mentioning earlier. So Sunrise is a $200 million fund, done with round 1, and just starting Sunrise 2 right now.
And how many companies would they invest in?
There were 11 in Sunrise 1.
So about 18 to 20 million a pop.
Yep. And
Average.
this Kodiak is an example of one that worked really, really well. So Kodiak, this friend of ours, Joel Clark, Joel had been like 20 years up in Salt Lake City with what was his grandfather's recipe for pancake mix. And this story is amazing. Joel is such a sharp guy. And he went on to do all kinds of interesting things, but kept coming back to this pancake business.
Okay, hold on a second. Pancake mix?
Pancake mix.
What can you do with pancake mix?
So here's the brilliance of this one.
Hold my beer, right?
Why everyone else is looking for, the sexy areas to go attack. He actually winds up with an idea that wakens up the sleeping giant. So the pancake mix business is $400 million. We go to Expo West, which was just last week here. It's an annual show where they have all the up-and-coming food and beverage brands, healthcare brands. And in our annual trip there, when we walk the show, we're meeting entrepreneurs and founders and stuff like that. You might see 800 to 1,000 companies. You're going to see about 20 brands, max. And we walked in that Kodiak booth, and we said, oh, my God, this is amazing. And what Joel had done was they had this bear on the package, back to your Geico. It's got personality that just is fantastic, that they wrapped around frontier-style eating and living. And as the thing that they had walked into was this idea of making, kind of like core eating occasions more robust, more nutritious. So what they did was with the type of whole wheat flour that they use and this kind of thing, they had 14 grams of protein in the serving versus the category sitting at like 2 to 4.
Oh, wow.
And they start blowing the doors in. They were on Shark Tank, gave them great visibility. They rejected the offer. Thanks for the publicity. They went to Target, and Steve, who I was talking about earlier, Steve Hughes, who runs Sunrise, Steve was asking how it's going. And they go, we're not in many places, but we are in Target. We have a 20 share. And Steve says, what? And with that visibility, we knew that they had something. And so we worked with them. What I do with Bill Hooper, who's another old friend of ours. Bill is an old ad guy that really understands consumer behavior. And I'm kind of like the business builder. And we put the two of us together and we look at these things. And with Kodiak, we were working with that team. And we realized, like Steve had seen earlier on, that there was a vision there that was much bigger than pancake mixes. But you win at the flagship first.
Right.
And so they have gone in the last 5 years, just on pancake mixes, they went from 2 or 3 share to now they're north of 20. The category leader was Aunt Jemima. They're now down to like low 20s. And it's about to flip.
Unbelievable.
So in 5 years, now the thing is that who would think, but the brilliance of it was they went into a $400 million category and where nobody was looking, just went in there and set up shop. The momentum from that turned into be the jettison to, well, okay, how often do you eat pancake mix, right? How about a product that people are using through the week? So let's go into the frozen business. And the frozen business is now on a tear. It's now their biggest business. And then how about oatmeal? Oatmeal, another gaping hole in terms of protein, big competition. And, they're on their way there now. They've got just like steady growth. And the thing that, when you asked about what's satisfying, it's the same thing as satisfying growth ventures is that these guys, they're friends, they're business partners. And when they come in with those numbers, it's like watching your favorite team win. It's
fantastic.
It's a blast. And by the way, I'm telling you the good part. Along the ride, it's been the same every single time. Not everything has been smooth.
Sure.
But it's are you in for the long haul? Can you play with the big vision?
Yeah, for sure. Let's take a quick break here, Bill. Get a word from our sponsor, and we'll be right back.
We would like to thank Modus for their support of the Next Entrepreneur podcast. Who is Modus? Modus is a facility services company that works in the e-commerce fulfillment industry across the United States. What do? They like to say they take it from the conveyor to the dock door. Well, what does that mean? It means that they're building the pick stations with the cable management. They're installing guardrails and bollards. They're putting down floor marking. They're putting up aerial signage. These guys build fencing systems, shelving systems, and racking systems. They also do rack recovery for when there's rack failures. They also install dock levelers and dock doors. Modus also installs ASRS systems, which is automated storage and retrieval systems, as well as other robotics projects. They've worked for the largest e-commerce retailers in the world, and they can work for you. If you need to find Modus, you can reach them online at modusmoves.com.
And we are back in the home of Bill Atchinson in Hollywood Hills. And folks, this is just absolutely stunning. Bill, this view, we started out talking about this, but it's just, I could look at it forever. It's just amazing. The Hollywood sign on the hill is just over my right shoulder here.
It's ridiculous. We've been here for 5 years, and I still go out almost every other night to take a picture. It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
it's so pretty.
It's just so beautiful, and the temperature's great. So we've just enjoyed our time here. I wanted to talk a little bit about changes in the industry, your industry, but also obviously in the industry of the clients that you serve, and with your focus being on food mainly. I'd like to focus on that, and I'm kind of taken back to I can't even wrap my mind around how many changes there have been in the food industry, the fast food industry, however you look at it. But I can remember, decades ago when I just kind of laugh when you'd see the sign "new and improved,"
yeah,
right? But looking back on it, it kind of strikes me that before then, seemingly nothing was new and nothing was improved. It just was what it was, No, that wasn't the case. But and then it's just been, lifestyle change, driving different things. And you look at the millennials and how I'm picking on millennials right now because they've been a force of nature.
Big change.
For change, right? And they, as a group, have changed the way they buy and spend. And I just wanted to see if you could give us some insight into change, not just during that time frame with millennials, but throughout your career. It's a big old question.
Yeah, I think the millennials, go back to the partnership with Steve. He had a sense when we were starting Sunrise that the millennials were a big opportunity. But I use this word, kind of very, very loosely because it's not the millennials as an age group. It's the millennials as a mindset as well, right? In terms of they brought a lot of fresh perspectives to things. And we were joking earlier about not even knowing what you had for lunch. I mean,
right.
There is so much variety, so much adventure in terms of what we eat. We did a project years ago with Frito-Lay, and we're down in Mexico. And we were tasting in the back of the lab these products that were just outstanding. And I remember the guy who was in charge of R&D saying, this stuff is all going to be in the States in about 10 years. And he was right. He was right. We were growing, as a country, we were growing into becoming more adventurous with flavors and stuff like that. But it all goes back to the consumer. It was that consumer group that did it. And Steve's idea was these brands who, new and improved, these old established brands, many of them have become kind of cash cows. They're not innovating. I had a good friend of mine that had a job at General Mills where we had done work with them on a whole portfolio of just unbelievable ideas for breakfast. And they never got out of the gate because he would go and present to his bosses these amazing numbers, and the response back would be, yeah, but is that going to be as profitable and as safe a bet as chocolate Cheerios? And the answer is, of course not. But if you don't take any risks, nothing changes. Right. And if the big companies aren't going to take those risks, because many times they're asset bound. I mean, when we did Healthy Choice Soups, going back to that analogy for a second, they were in 11 ounces, 19-ounce cans. That's all they offered. We went in 15 ounces just to screw with them, because now there's no way of comparing. We could price whatever the hell we wanted. There's no comparison. And actually, as it turned out, we were more in tune with the way consumers were eating because that 15-ounce can was actually a preferred serving size. But it's the same thing if you're dealing with millennials today, right, where they look at the world differently. We've got 4 millennials as kids, and I love it. I think that if you view that as I want to, it's almost like the sports analogy, right? I want to play where the puck is going. It's very similar that way. And what's interesting is many times they can't tell you the answers either. This is kind of Steve Jobs' brilliance, which is sometimes you have to have the product to inspire them to think, and open up their thinking in these different categories.
Yeah, and I think there's other things that are driving their decision making. So, for example, we had a brilliant lady on our show. She runs a company called Something Borrowed Blooms, and it's silk flowers for weddings, and in lieu of real flowers. And her business is just absolutely zooming, and the buyers of her product place a value on the environmental impact. And at first I was like, okay, so what is the environmental impact of flowers? I would have thought that's a good thing. But all the water, for example, that it takes to grow all these flowers and all that, and to transport. And these silk flowers, you rent them, and then you return them. So there's a cost efficiency there. In other words,
All
they're
different
saving money
dynamics,
doing
right?
that.
Yeah.
But it's, and certainly that factors into their decision. But they place a very strong value on that environmental side of it too. So it seems like what's happening there is they're being, they're thinking beyond maybe what previous generations were in their buying habits.
In such a big way. I think that, so one of our companies that we have at Sunrise is this really interesting group called Pact. And Pact is one of those companies out there. They make organic clothing. And I never knew this, but apparently, the fashion business is one of the biggest polluters in the world. And they do this in this way, which is so much more positive for the environment. And there's a real following out there for this. And then there's other brands in the U.S. here, like Outer Known is right here in L.A. and a few other ones like that. But they have developed a following not only for the fashion they provide, but the consumers are committed to the cause. And when I was growing up, when I was in high school and we were growing and stuff like that, so my younger brother, I was the kid that was wearing my younger brother's hand-me-downs. Right. I wasn't worried about whether it was organic. And yet today, that's a big factor. So, and there's another company that we have, which I think is fascinating, which is this group called Maple Hill Milk. Maple Hill Milk. Maple Hill. So Maple Hill, what they do is it's grass-fed milk. And it's kind of the way that milk was always made where we grew up in dairy country up in upstate New York. But the grass-fed milk is not only healthier for the cows, it leads to healthier milk. It's healthier for the environment, all these wonderful things. We wound up looking at that as a brand challenge and going, again, how do I get to this millennial mom with this message? It's complicated. There's so much stuff here. And we were going back and forth, and all of a sudden, I don't know where the inspiration came from, but their original package had this old, you remember the old milk jugs, the containers? That was on their package. And we thought, that's a symbol of quality and this kind of thing, and, fresh from the farm. The decision to change that and put the cow on there and put the cow's name on there. So we have Buttercup on one, and these different Acorn is on another one. And the thing was that it was so engaging for consumers, they would flip it over and they would start to read about the benefits of grass-fed milk. You can come in at whatever level you're interested in, but it's a product that's become a brand with a story. And that's what I think, this generation is teaching us, is that, and by the way, they're not the first generation that's reacted this way. It's just that today I think we have so much more of an understanding, and this group has more of an appreciation for it. And the other thing I learned is that why we say millennials, it really is that millennial mindset, because I feel the same way. I'm no millennial. I mean,
yeah,
that bus is long gone.
But several of your products, several of your clients, they're in the healthy food product business. I mean, that's a real focus of your business. It is. So you've mentioned Steve a couple of times. Steve
Hughes,
is the CEO of Sunrise Strategic.
Yes, yeah.
And I've read where you made a quote about him. You said it was like strapping yourself to a rocket engine.
Oh, that quote. Yes.
Yeah. So he must be a pretty dynamic guy.
He's we think the same way. We get excited about an idea, and it's like, hold on to the table. Here we go again.
Okay, so you're taking what you've done in growth strategies. You've done it, for your entire life for 40 years in business, and with your career prior to starting your business. So it seems like it would be really, really exciting. When you worked for corporate America, you're building brands for a big company. Here, you're consulting, and then there's the investment side of it. So you're really up close and personal with that.
Oh, it's fun.
That must be an absolute.
But you always have your eye out for this. There was a long time ago, we took a family vacation where we went to Kauai, and we fell in love with this little hamburger stand called Bubba's, and I've never seen anything like it. And it was so funny because we were there for a week. We went there a couple times, and the place was so entertaining. It was like if Ben and Jerry's had a one-stand hamburger stand, this was it. And after we were there, we said to the kids, they were all teenagers at the time, hey, whatever you'd like to take back, let's take something back to remember. Beautiful beach, beautiful area, and stuff like that. 2 of the 4 picked Bubba's T-shirts, and I think that's it. It's like, I don't care if you're making a hamburger stand or if you're a $100 million business. If you think in a way about how I can create better solutions for my consumers, you're going to have fun and you're going to win.
Yeah. Let me ask you a tough one. I didn't give you prep on this, but when you look back over your career, what do you think is some of the best advice that you've heard have been given that you would share with a young entrepreneur?
Oh boy, for the entrepreneurs, I think it goes back to that idea about be resilient, right? I mean, you've done it. I mean, it's the willingness when everything looks bright and all of a sudden, many times for reasons you can't control, something goes wrong.
Right.
How enterprising are you? How much passion do you have for it?
Right.
Oh, we've all seen that. I mean, how many times have they talked about in any endeavor, the best musician, the best athlete, and stuff like that? Many times there's God-given talent, but it's like, what do you do with it? And it's the resilience and perseverance.
So, look, you're in a really beautiful setup here. This is a great place to get outside and enjoy life. I know that you love to do a lot of outdoor activities.
Big biker these days.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the pandemic, we got my old bike. That best present my wife ever gave me was this old mountain bike that I've had for years. And here it's beautiful. I can ride over to the reservoir, and I had a goal last year of seeing if I could ride 5,000 miles and did.
No kidding.
Yeah, so
that's a milestone.
There's another connection with these bikes with kids because
yeah.
I see the faces on those kids and I go, I get that.
Yeah,
that's really great.
Yeah, well, that is cool. 5,000 miles in a year is an absolute. That's a good milestone for sure.
Allows me to drink beer.
Well, look, and when you have weather like this, we have all sorts of excuses. And down south, either it's too hot or sometimes it's too cold.
And that's real heat, by the way.
Yeah. But you got some taste of real heat in Scottsdale, right?
Yeah.
Look, Bill, I have enjoyed talking with you. I love doing the research on you and finding out about what you do. And when I think about exactly what you've done in your career, it seems to be one of the most exciting things that I could imagine doing, if I was in your shoes. I mean, just growing businesses, which is my passion, So congrats on a great career, and thank you again for all the support that you've given us throughout the years at the McLindon Family Foundation. And
You are welcome, and it's great to see you.
Yeah, well, you've helped change some lives, and we're grateful for that. So thank you for sharing your stories with us today, sir.
You're so welcome.
Appreciate
Thank you.
Oh my goodness, it was such a treat to talk with Bill. Just the nicest guy in the world. And I just love his career. That focus on business management that is a deep dive into growth. And his stories of working with these national companies and helping bring brands to life just sounds so interesting. His early career, the 15 years where he was working for big corporate America companies, and then his 25 years with Growth Ventures. But there's something about being in his home in the Hollywood Hills overlooking downtown LA, as you heard us go on and on about how beautiful it was during the podcast. It's really stunning example of what a successful career can lead to. And look, we wish him the best of luck with the work that he's doing with Sunrise Strategic Partners. The fact that they're now able to take their growth strategies and bring it together with an investment model seems just very, very exciting. So we appreciate Bill for his time. We appreciate you guys watching, and we'll catch you next time. We would like to thank our title sponsor, B1 Bank. They can be found online at b1bank.com. The Next Entrepreneur is produced by Propel Productions. You can find more information at propelyourstory.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the Next Entrepreneur podcast and hit the bell for notifications. You can also follow us on social media. The links are in the description below.